it your first time out in Philly? Yes?
Mm-hmm. It felt more like a record store version of Hot Topic.
It's the most disheveled sort of feeling, like we're not sure where to put all this merchandise that we have. They're lined up.
But you find gold in those
albums.
places. Whether it's analog or digitalog or digitalog.
Digital.
Digital.
He has an idea of what he thinks that I like, which he's largely right. But
I was going to say, no, I know.
Hey, Haas. Welcome to a special edition of Not Collection Connection here on Good Show Ponsonby. I have a special set of circumstances today. So we are going to take a 1 week break from the regular programming. We have a special guest here, so we're going to do a special episode. And the special guest is my brother from the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel. In the flesh, it is Plastic Eric.
How's it going, folks? How you doing, Bryce?
Good. So in the past, every time I've gone, in the past few years anyway, when I've gone to see Eric, we've always kind of done a video, but those have always appeared on his channel since we were at his house. But he has come out to visit me here out in Pennsylvania. So I wanted to try to make a video documenting his visit. He came out to see me, but also to go record shopping and check out some of the stores we have in the area. And so I thought we would talk about that experience, do a little bit of what he picked up, but not necessarily everything. We were going to do everything, but then he went and picked up 36 records so far. So so that wasn't going to happen because I don't want to make a 2-hour video. And so we thought we would just talk about what it was like. It's your first time out in Philly, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And technically we're not in Philadelphia, but close enough on the national map that I'm calling it Philly. Yeah, so you want to say something about being in Philly?
No, so far
for the
it's been
first
really good. I've been enjoying it a lot. It's been an interesting mix so far with the three that we went to.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been to Shady Dog,
Mm-hmm.
we've been to Rock Shop, and Main Street Music,
That's
right?
right.
Which is more in your local area than it is in the downtown part of Philly.
Yeah, and we have high hopes of maybe doing some more record shopping, but logistics working out the way they are, I don't think we would be able to film after visiting the actual Philadelphia record stores. So I may be able to grab some B-roll, but I won't be able to talk to you while we're doing it.
Right. And so, yeah, basically, first place we went to was Shady Dog, and wasn't that a place that you were basically is the closest shop to you? So you took me to the closest shop to you, but you haven't been there in a while because you didn't think that they had CDs or something like that?
Yeah, I've been prior to shopping there a couple of days ago. I'd been there exactly one time, and they had a shelf about that big, yay big, with CDs on it, and I still buy CDs. And I was that wasn't much. I did find a Trash Can Sinatra's album that I didn't know existed, so I had bought a thing there. But when I sort of lamented to the owner, I still buy CDs, and the CD selection is pretty thin, he said at that time, yeah, I'm trying to get out of CDs. Nobody wants them anymore. So I thought, okay, well, not out of spite or anything, but it's like, okay, well, he's moving his business in a different direction than what I'm shopping for, so I won't go in anymore. But I knew that they had a lot of vinyl. It was the one closest to me. A mix. It felt a little heavier in the used to me than the new, and the whole place set up. It's an old converted house, and really kind of that dingy, packed-in record store vibe going on. But going back
Not
in
the
there,
most packed in I've seen. Well, no, that place was packed in. Yeah, Shady Dog was.
Of the three, I think it's the most disheveled sort of feeling, like we're not sure where to put all this merchandise that we have. They're lined up on the floor.
But you find gold in those
albums.
places.
Yeah.
That's more, when I was in Europe, that's more what it was like in Europe. Was that it would be, like when I went in Barcelona, it was extremely disorganized. Mm-hmm. From going in as a customer point perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But what was weird is I'd be like, you know, he's like, is there anything in particular you're looking for? And I'd be like, do you got any budgie? Oh yeah, we got budgie. There should be some over there.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some over there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think we had some come in recently. So then I checked in those spots, and then, you know, and I actually did find some. So he knew where everything was, but there was literally hardly any rhyme or reason to any of it. There's no cards that say this band or that band. And I noticed with this place, there'd be a record where the card was, but that's kind of generally where, if you look there were other bands mixed in that area, but you knew you could find, say it was in the Bees, you could find Bad Religion in that spot. Whereas, yeah, Bad Religion might be the next record after that card or the one before it, but as you're going through it, there might be just 2 or 3 records there, but before that next card comes up, it's not all Bad Religion in there. It's a whole bunch of other stuff till you get to that card.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so you found some stuff there. I was surprised to find that they had some new release CDs, and their CD selection had exploded from when I was in there 6 or 7 years ago. And so I'm going to have to go back. It is the closest music store to me. And I was like, shoot, I need to become a regular customer here, support this. Because I'm also, I buy CDs. 2, I don't really buy used that often. And that's not my preference. And so it felt like they were invested in the used and invested in the LP. And so it didn't seem like it was a shop for me. But upon walking in, and the only reason I went back in is because Eric was visiting, and I thought, well, they have vinyl there. Maybe he'll find something that, it's something exciting there.
And I did.
And, but yeah, I found brand new CDs too, brand new titles. I got the new La Moon and the new Vampire Weekend there. But, yeah, what did you find?
Dude, I found a lot of stuff. Some UFO, a lot of used stuff. I don't think I only got a couple of new things there, and one of them was Fela Kuti. I don't know if I want to block the mic here, but Fela Kuti is, I believe he's out of Nigeria. And I heard about this guy from a channel, Steve Carlson.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Carlson on there champions this guy big time. He's got a lot of his albums. It's one of those things that it seems like it's really expensive, and sometimes the quality's not quite there. But it seems like this is made either here or in Europe, and it might be a little bit good quality, and for $30. So it is more on the high end of what I would do. But really, because Steve Carlson recommends it so much, I figured I'd give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
The samples that I've heard from him are always really good. So if you get a chance, check out Steve Carlson's channel. Steve Carlson, I think Vinyl Community.
Don't block me.
Oh. But, oh, now you're throwing me off, huh?
And so,
I like to try something new. For me, a lot of what goes on with the collecting is finding new stuff that you're not familiar with. I mean, I even do that with bands that I'm familiar with. I purposely don't listen to albums on Spotify of something that I might want to get down the road, because I want the enjoyment of being able to listen to it for the first time on vinyl and enjoying it that way. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, there might be that one song you don't care for on there or something, but it already predisposes me sometimes. Not that I don't listen to albums to preview first.
mm-hmm.
I've done that plenty of times too. But if it's somebody that I'm already into and I'm trying to get all of their records, I'll tend not to listen to those records that I haven't heard yet. So Budgie would be one of those. UFO is another one of those bands. This This place here had some Bad Company that I needed. Bad Company is a good band to get into because they made so many records. They're still fairly popular, but their records are generally on the used market around the $10 mark. And so that's a band I want to get into that when I was a little kid that I didn't know at all until I got older. And even I was probably well into my 40s till I really started listening to Bad Company songs. And now that I'm in my 50s, I really want to go back and listen to a lot of that music that I didn't know as a little kid, either between being too young or living in Europe at the time where that wasn't as popular as it was in the States. And by the time we got back to the States, it's already gone and done. And so, because, music tends to shift that way. So it's about discovery, a lot of it for me, and trying out new stuff. And so this is a guy that I'm not entirely familiar with. Just some samples that I've heard. But he's praised enough by somebody that I respect enough in the vinyl community to say, okay, I'll give that one a go. So yeah, it turns out Fela
Kuti.
Fela Kuti.
Yeah, I don't know Fela directly, but I know he was a primary inspiration for Talking Heads on the Remain in Light album. And I'm aware of the musical style, and I had read things about him. I think that there's one or even 2 or 3 albums of his in the 1,000 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book, and it talked how he would just cook a rhythm, like he's not starting the song till it is simmered and brewed and is ready to go. And so they would hang on just a repetition of a phrase for 10 minutes, 20 minutes until he was really feeling in the pocket. And I get that out of Remain in Light, which, the David Byrne has his lyrics over the top of a very repetitive groove. So I'm only really aware of Fela from what I've read about him and from the influence. And I think one of the, maybe not tracks, but maybe a bonus track on a reissue of Remain in Light is even called like Fela's Groove, making it explicit that
they're influenced by.
That was an inspiration on that album. So in addition to the Vampire Weekend and Low Moon new releases, the one used thing that I did get from Shady Dog was this Style Council album. Here's Something That Got Away. I picked it up because it's not one that I've seen before. It's clearly a collection from the title, and is B-sides, and it says even in little words there, contains rare and unreleased recordings. I have come around. It's been a long time since I did come around, but the Jam were a thing, and when we were living in England, and didn't necessarily dominate the charts, but they had hits. And at that time, that sort of Northern Soul and R&B inspiration that they took just didn't feel like the pop music that I wanted to listen to the most, and I was kind of disparaging of it. And Paul Weller, after dissolving the Jam, went on to form the Style Council, and it was much more mannered music, not given in to the same kind of just joyous rave ups that the Jam would produce. And I almost kind of then went backwards back to the Jam and came to appreciate both outfits kind of through my wife. But it tends to be the earlier Style Council. It felt like as the Style Council went on, they got kind of further and further kind of up their asses, which was initially entertaining, and they got some good tunes out of it. By the end, I always want to call it the Singular Confessions, but that was their collection, the Style Council collection of sort of the greatest hits. Confessions of a Pop Group was their last album, and it's not unlistenable, but it is so taking itself seriously that it's not a lot of fun. But that's the Style Council, and these collections of kind of B-sides. We have, I have at this point now the entire recordings of the Jam. I got a box set that has everything that they did on it. Like they did, like the Police had, the kind of complete recordings box set. I could have one of those for the Jam. But this seemed interesting. I'd never seen it before. It's the kind of thing, it was made in the U.S., but from 1993, kind of after the group had dissolved, and just a rarities compilation that I found interesting and thought, hey, when am I ever going to see that again? And it's not the kind of title that I would ever order either. I'm only ever going to buy this if I come across it in a record store.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, never seen it before. The chances I'm ever going to just run across it again, pretty slim. So I'll pick it up, see what it's all about.
Right on.
All right, so after that, we went to the Rock Shop, which is the record store. It's been open for a few years now in the King of Prussia Mall, which doesn't sound very cool, but the King of Prussia Mall, if you don't know, I think it's the second biggest mall after the Mall of America in the U.S., and it's ginormous. Has a lot of high-end stuff, and I was happy when they opened just a straight-up record store, because the mall record stores you think of, like the Sam Goody's and For Your Entertainment, the FYEs and stuff from years past, didn't have a lot of personality. So I certainly shopped at them in the 90s and in the 80s, but they've all kind of disappeared. You don't really have just a chain of record stores anymore that you would find in malls. And so here's kind of a one-off place, the Rock Shop. It kind of has that same vibe, but it's pretty clean because it's in the mall, in the very snotty kind of King of Prussia Mall. But yeah, they got all the kitschy lunch boxes and stuff. If you want a Kiss lunchbox or a...
I didn't see any, but they probably have Funko Pops.
Yeah, they have Funko Pops of things, and some kitschy things, coasters and things like that of different bands. I would say they were much more invested in new albums than Shady Dog was. A much larger selection of, and by new I just mean not used, I don't mean new releases, although they have plenty of those too. But you can get a fairly deep catalog. They have Smith's records and things like that in there. So they do offer some used items as well. They have a fairly good selection of CDs, so I like to stop by there every so often if it's something that I think that I might find there. It's not my go-to if I'm looking for a really specific title, but if it's something that I feel like is going to have a halfway decent general release, I will search for it there, in part just because I want to keep that music store, do my bit anyway to keep that music store in business, because I like that it's there.
Yeah, it felt more like a record store version of Hot Topic. Not that that's bad. I don't want to, like, I'm knocking it or anything, because I like to buy shit at Hot Topic, but they definitely had more new pressings. They had very impressive used albums too. Their used albums were all along one wall, and then their new ones were kind of like in a little U shape. They had their new arrivals in the front, so they had their basic record store set up. But I found some gold in there too.
Yeah, and I would say maybe it's more of like a Tower Records kind of vibe. It was pretty put together, but it was a little bit, the wooden racks and stuff. It didn't feel septic, or antiseptic, I should say.
It felt like it could be a chain.
Yeah, but I don't believe it is. I'll double check on that.
Right.
Issue a correction if necessary, but
like it's kind of aimed at we're not their first market that they're aiming at in that store.
Yeah.
Whereas Shady Dog we're the guys they want to see come in. This place, they like that we got money, but they're looking for more younger people with disposable incomes.
And probably try and maybe convert a few people.
Right, right. And so, in doing so, the best way you can convert people over is by having. They do have some good records. They had an impressive wall. They had impressive stuff just in the bins that was used. I was surprised about.
Yeah, so what did you find there?
I ended up going with Love and Rockets, one that I had on album from the old collection. And actually, yeah, this one's still in the thing because it's that fold kind that I hate. I'll get rid of that as soon as I get it home. And I thought that this was a gatefold. It's not a gatefold. So yeah, Earth, Sun, Moon. This is an album I loved as a younger person. When I first started getting into record collecting, a buddy of mine got this. He got it for a lot cheaper than what I did. But this is an original pressing, an original U.S. pressing. So it's nice to get one that's been on my list for a long time.
And it was funny. It seemed like at a later record store, there was a suggestion where they had a Deep Love and Rockets collection that has maybe recently been repressed. But you're saying this is an original.
This is an original. This is from 1987.
80s, yeah.
So this one's from 87. The one that we saw at the later place was like an Abbey Road remaster or something like that. Which
yeah.
I got a couple of those where they're like half speed masters, which are not bad either. I'm not so much into audiophile where I necessarily get into different pressings and how they sound, but I do want at least some decent sounding ones that. And so this is more of the old technology. It's going to sound, I think, a little bit better on a turntable. Not to say whether it's analog or digital or digital. Digital. Damn it. But this is one here. It's been on my want list for a long time, so I can actually go on Discogs and pull this one off out of the wish list. And so, I thought that this thing was great when I was a kid. And I ended up picking up another, the one.
Was it Express or Seventh Dream of Teenage Heaven? The Seventh Dream.
Seventh Dream
of Teenage Heaven. I wonder if you picked up any other Dream albums while you were out. But so Love and Rockets, you probably know, is one of the splinters off the family tree of Bauhaus. Peter Murphy kind of went his own way. And these guys messed around. They were like Tones on Tail, I think, for a little while before becoming Love and Rockets. I think, even though this was maybe their third album, I think after Seventh Dream of Teenage Heaven and Express came first, and I think Earth, Sun, Moon, I believe, was their third without researching it before. But it was really big on the alternative charts. No New Tale to Tale was a single that really made a lot of headway.
I want to say there was one other on there.
Well, there's others. Yeah, definitely at least
Mirror
another
People?
single.
No New Tale to Tale.
And I don't think it was Welcome Tomorrow, but that is kind of my dark horse favorite from that album.
It's been a while since I've heard it.
Oh,
so I'm looking forward to just refamiliarizing myself with it again.
Yeah, I've had it on CD all these years. So I have, I think, all of theirs except for their last one, the one that had So Alive on it. And that was one of those bait and switch albums where So Alive was like the biggest, I think, hit that they ever had. But it so wasn't representative of the rest of that album. Was like super sludgy.
And what was the name of that album again?
I think it was just called Love and Rockets. I think it was like a self-titled.
Because I do have Express at home.
Okay.
So I'm getting caught up on my Love and Rockets in general. So I might have to move in and get some Bauhaus stuff too.
There you go. And so what I got from the Rock Shop is, again, I dipped in. I got one Rilo Kiley because we had recently done on the Collection Connection Jenny Lewis. I talked about, I was aware that she was in Rilo Kiley sort of after the fact, and the album that I got, Under the Blacklight, was actually the album where I first became aware of them. And you may be able to tell by just the name of the album, it was sort of criticized as maybe being a little too off color. Like if you think about things that you might look for under a black light, that it was maybe a little too much about that kind of stuff. But I never heard any of it. I'd never heard any of them on the radio, and it wasn't until Jenny Lewis did her thing that I was like, oh, she was out of Rilo Kiley, and that might be interesting. So I got a Rilo Kiley, but from the new, and that was a used one. I just decided, I had a short list. I said, if I see something that's on my short list in the record store, I'll buy it, because what the hell. Okay, we're back after some technical difficulties. Suffice it to say, bought a Rilo Kiley CD. But the thing that I bought from the new bin was this Ride album, Smile, which I think is actually a compilation of 2 early Ride EPs. They're a band, I'm 98% sure that they're out of England. I have one CD from them already called Going Blank Again. That was kind of a flyer that I just bought out of nowhere back when it was current. And there are a couple tracks on there that I like really well, even though it's not an album that I went to very often. But I thought, oh, wow, an old 1990 CD, still new. And yeah, 1990 on that. And I thought, in the spirit of record shopping and encouraging, again, stores to stock things that aren't necessarily, the latest Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Ed Sheeran album.
I don't think they'd make any money if that was all they sold.
that I would give that a go. So I went with Ride. Are you familiar with Ride in the least?
No.
So.
And that was the one we heard in the car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were liking it, right?
I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. Very guitar-y.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised that you liked it.
Yeah, see? He has an idea of what he thinks that I like, which he's largely right. But
I was going to say, no, I know.
But
my kids even know.
Yeah. They recognize whenever, I guess, he has a Collection Connection album to listen to, and it doesn't sound like what he listens to, his kids will say, is that a
homework album?
Yeah, is that an Uncle Bryce record? And he's like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, you influenced my Spotify too.
But yeah, I come at it from some angles, There is, like, the Jenny Lewis was something a little different. And I think last week's Gary Clark Jr. was something a little different. So I definitely have a wheelhouse that is sort of smart, sophisticated pop music. But things branch off of that and can sound wildly different. And Early Ride is one of those things, apparently. A little more psychedelic, freak-outy, noise, swamp kind of thing, but in an engaging way. I liked my first listen of it, but it was one that I completely didn't know before I bought it the other day. And so the last place we went was Main Street Music. That was a place, the primary place that I was excited to take Eric to. That is my go-to. It's in Manayunk, Pennsylvania. So none of these 3 are in Philly proper, kind of in the wider environs of Philadelphia. And if we do get to go into the Philadelphia record stores, it's going to be tomorrow after we have a chance to really film any kind of discussion of it. And that is my go-to if there is a new release or something that's hard to get. I've actually ordered a few things through them, some shout-out louds and things like that. Give them that business because they seem invested in the kind of music that I really like to listen to. In addition to kind of the old, new percentages,
right?
Lots of times record stores have a vibe. Like, no, they're into rock music here. They're into the 60s here. Main Street Music seems to pitch kind of right at my demographic of what I am excited to listen to. And I think the owner is maybe Feels weird to say he's probably close to a contemporary of mine, and so maybe we have some the kind of things he decides to order. But yeah, that's where I bought the Linda Lindas, and it was just on a recommended thing, and I thought that sounds interesting. Ended up really liking that. Made it a collection connection. He liked it enough. He bought it.
Yeah, I think I picked it up at like Barnes and Noble. So.
Yeah, so we're out there selling records, expanding fan bases. And what was your impression of Main Street?
You pretty much nailed it right there. He's basically in the middle between the two. He was much more organized than Shady Dog.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having stuff coming in. But then again, it was like in that old house thing. So he could be using the second story as storage. So as stuff goes out, he's filling it back in. You know, I don't know. I'm just guessing. And so he was more organized. Where you saw the card, that's where it was. Like more like in Rock Shop than in Shady Dog. And so yeah, he was like a mix of the two. Where he's not necessarily specialized. He was more equal one-on-one in the sense of the first place we went to, mostly used, some new. The place we went to next was mostly new and a decent amount of used. This place was about 50-50 new and used. And all kind of mixed together.
And kind of a flip of the layout of the Rock Shop in that the new stuff was around the periphery.
Right.
And the stuff in the middle of the stuff. And so Rock Shop was far and away the largest kind of footprint of them. Shady Dog, so it's kind of in the middle there too. Shady Dog was very much cramped into an old house. And Main Street Music felt like a shop, but it's like a shop more than a store. It's like a music shop.
But it doesn't feel crowded.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking Shady Dog because I like that aspect of it. That you already kind of feel crowded in there when you're by, just the two of us in there. It already feels kind of crowded. And that's how it was in some of the places that I've been to in Europe. Whereas Main Street was more organized, a little bit more open. There were more people in there, but it still didn't feel as crowded as it did in the first place. In Shady Dog. And so I found that was really a nice thing about that too. But again, don't get me wrong, I like that feeling in the Shady Dog. It's like what we talked about, about basements. When you go in somebody's basement and you smell that smell, you smell that smell on records. And so yeah, I go in some basements and I go, records.
Yeah, but Shady Dog feels like the kind of place to me that is more made for used record buyers because it just in and of itself gives the feeling of I'm going to dig something up, I'm going to find something, I'm going to discover something here,
right?
As opposed to look, I want the new Peter Gabriel album. It's like. Now you go to a store that this is much more, I don't want to say it's not curated necessarily, but much more, there's stuff here, not to the degree of the European stores. I mean, there was organization to it, and it was more about, and I think what was in the shelves was well organized, but there was an ass load of stuff underneath and kind of on floors, and they just had more stuff than they had places to put it. And with such an emphasis on used records, it feels like it would appeal to the kind of people who like to go to swap meets and find something that just passing through. I snagged it while it was there, and it feels like okay, somewhere in this.
But Main Street had a new arrivals.
Well, Main Street did. Yeah, I was talking about Shady Dog.
Oh, Shady Dog. They had new arrivals as well, but their new arrivals is for those guys to go in at least once a week to that place all the time to see what they got. That's probably the kind of customer, like your new arrivals are going to be more for your guy that comes in on a regular basis. He can go right there and know what's there. he can just ask and say, "Did you get anything else in these other bins?" You know, and but it looks like they're constantly filling and emptying those bins as well. I mean, emptying through selling the records and then filling them back in because they had records stacked in spots that were getting ready to go into places. Whereas that seems like it was already all done. He's not in the process of maintaining the thing when we were in there, though he did have a customer bring in a turntable, and he donated the turntable, and then a guy bringing in, was he just donating the records? Or was he looking at getting a price?
I think he was planning on getting a price.
That's right, because he got his number, and he said, "Look, you can leave them here, and I'll go through them and give you a price, and then we'll work it from there." That's what I was very rudely eavesdropping on their conversation. But
it's hard not to.
But, right, because it was that kind of space, but also as a record collector, I find that fascinating. I've talked about it with other people before about, like, could I start my own record store? And so that guy is taking in, obviously, used records. And so, you know, again, it's either somebody, he looked like the kind of guy that maybe was into records for a while there and got out of it, or I don't know if he had, like, his dad's old records or something, because it sounded like he came in once before with some, and he's like, "Hey, I got some more for you." And so I don't know if he's particularly a flipper or, you know, what the exact thing was, but it's fascinating to me to watch that and think to myself, could I ever have a record store? And would I get tired of doing that all the time? Because I do like making it, just keeping it as your hobby, is you get to take your time delving into Discogs and what it's going to be in your collection and all that kind of thing like that.
So amongst the things that you found there, would you started big, I think, at Shady Dog with like a dozen records or more from the first.
I had about 17 there.
17, a few less at Rock Shop.
Because they were a little bit more higher priced. The one thing about Shady Dog was, I mean, that $30 record I showed was the most expensive record that I got. They had some very good prices there. Rock Shop had way higher prices, but they did have a very good VG Plus selection near mint of records. They had a higher degree of those type of records that I could see right off the get-go. And then this place was more in the, again, in between. His stuff was not expensive. I did buy one expensive record there, but all the rest of them were like, well, I got Queen under $30. So since it was under $30, that makes it so that I figured I'd go ahead and get it, even though it's a newer pressing. Again, I'm not trying to necessarily get all OGs or all reissues. I kind of like having a blend of new and old of an artist. So like a newer pressing. But I don't necessarily want to get into having multiple copies of records. And so some people like to do that. I know plenty of people, when it comes to Beatles, have several versions of the White Album, several versions of Rubber Soul or Revolver. You know, I want to have the mono mix. I want to have the stereo mix. I want to have the
new one,
the stereo fold down mono mix. You know what I'm saying? Like they get into that. I don't get into it that much, but I do want to have a nice recording to go with. But yeah, this Queen, News of the World. It's the album that introduced me to Queen. It's "We Will Rock You" was the first song. Uncle Mark played it to us in his bedroom just before we were heading out to England, I think. No. Yeah, I think it was just before we headed out to England, because it wasn't long after that, while we were in England, that I started hearing songs from the Jazz album. So I remember when Fat Bottom Girls was a hit.
Yeah, we used to have the shrink wrap on it, but the gatefold picture in the News of the World album. And I guess there was a whole Family Guy episode about Stewie being freaked out by the
Oh, really? I did not know that. Because
the News
that
of the
kind of
World.
ties into your story.
Yeah. This wasn't our uncle, but we stayed at one of our aunt's house, and they had a copy that was under the bed, and we were staying there overnight. And this was like right before we left for England, because we were not in our house anymore, and we were kind of on a goodbye tour before we left for 6 years to go to England. And in the room that I was staying in, I was aware that there was a copy of News of the World under the bed, and I could not get out of my head the image of this giant metal hand coming from under the bed and just kind of grasping the whole bed and crushing me. Just the sadness, sort of, and the
So look at that first face in that picture.
So yeah, people wild-eyed running away, the panic in the face of the people, and just the total mildness of the robot creature with very human eyes just reaching down.
Almost like a child picking up a bunch of ants or something.
Oh, that freaked me out. That and I think Iron Maiden Killers are the only time that artwork has really kind of stuck in my head in a way that bothered me. But yeah, so our experience with News of the World goes all the way back to the 70s, and even you have had it in various formats. I know I gave you the Crown Jewels when it first came out as a box set on CD back in the early 90s. I think Queen was a little bit of a holdout on CD. Like, most people had put out their back catalog on CD by the time Queen got around to doing it, and I don't think they did it till about 1990 on the Hollywood records. And there was a special box set that had album replicas. Was something that I got for you to kind of, here's everything on CD all at once, and the Crown Jewels,
and it doesn't have hot space,
and it stops at the game, right?
Right.
So I got him that, but I have all of that stuff as well. You know, now that I did it over a course of a number of years, and it wasn't really until I bought a different box set, the more recent one, where they reissued them sort of 5 albums at a time over 3 box sets, I think, and I got the first 2 of them. It wasn't until then that I had Queen and Queen 2 and the Flash Gordon soundtrack, but everything else that was in these box sets was something that I already owned. But yeah, it's a great album, Queen, News of the World. And anything else you want to say on that?
Well, I wanted to, as you were talking there, it was making me think that I've got the Crown Jewels, but I also have I believe it's MoFi Fidelity, has the gold CDs, and I believe I have News of the World and Night at the Opera on those gold CDs that, like, when you open it up,
it lifts it up.
It lifts it up a little bit, and there's a little where the thing is, it just kind of moves out a little bit, so you literally can just lift it off of there, and then when you put it back, you kind of just lay it in there, and then it clips it in tight. So that's a neat part of packaging that I find in that particular CD, which is still kind of my warehouse because I still have CDs and I still listen to my CDs. But for the most part, I do listen between the albums and the cassette. And so going along with, you like CDs, that's my special CD because, again, I like the packaging as well when that gets thrown in there. And so, yeah. As you know, Queen's one of my favorite things. And then it's weird because you talk about the Family Guy story, Ted, which was also done by what's his name, Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, there you go.
That in Ted, it was all about Queen, Flash.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just love the fact that they incorporated that into that movie.
Yeah.
You know, because that was another big Queen thing that was big for when we were kids, you know, swooshing our Legos and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, I felt that the Philly experience has been really, really good.
That's good. Yeah, and I have one thing. I didn't buy anything from Mainstream Music, but I came away with 3 CDs. My kid came and picked out a couple of things: a Brian Setzer and Spirit of the Beehive, which seems like it may be more experimental. They picked it based on covers kind of entirely. They both had devils on them. I don't know what that means, but we listened to the Brian Setzer. Not bad. Brian Setzer-y, you know, kind of what you would expect, I think, from there. His newest one called The Devil Always Collects.
It's more rock and roll, like the Stray Cat days. Less big bandy.
Less big band. But yeah, still in that kind of rockabilly vein and old-timey, kind of more 50s influence going. Eric he wanted to buy me something to kind of make up. I always tend to buy him something, I guess, like when we go to Amoeba out in LA, and he wanted to buy me something. It ended up that he bought enough in his records that he got basically a credit that kind of paid for it in itself, but it got the new Elbow. First time I've seen it on CD. I shopped for it. It's only been out a few weeks. I shopped for it when it first released, but nobody had the CD when I went by to look for them, so I was happy to see it on CD. Picked it up. I know that it is more muscular than their last few albums have been, and it's more based on jams and grooves. The last album, Flying Dream 1, I don't even know that I've listened to more than once or twice. It didn't feel like it had a lot of shape to it. But they've been evolving, it feels like, over time into kind of maturing into much softer music and, you know, more sort of compositions than songs that feel very kind of, you know, deliberate and thought out and artistic, and yet that makes them sort of less grabby to me. But I love Guy Garvey's voice. I always have. I think he's maybe the single best singer currently out there, in my opinion. I love the weatheredness of his voice, and so I'm excited for something that's got a little more meat on the bones than the last few albums have had. But I haven't really had a chance to listen to it yet. I've just seen a couple of the videos on YouTube for I think Baloo and Things I've Told Myself for Years, Things I've Been Telling Myself for Years, and Lover's Leap. Actually, I've seen that too. So I've heard a couple, and so I know that it starts to harken back to Seldom Seen Kid and especially kind of Cast of Thousands days. So I'm excited about a new Elbow album. I hope that I love it, because they're a band that my attention has been waning on, because they've been getting kind of less and less making the kind of music that really stirs me into more kind of reflective, and which can be really great. They do a really great version of that, but when the entire album is that, it starts to lose me a little bit. But yeah, so that kind of overall, I think that wraps it up. Unless you have something you have to say about Elbow.
Well, I do agree with you on his voice. I think I described to you before. Yeah, his voice made me think of it like a viola. Mm-hmm. So it's very string based to me. When the album that you got me, Leaders of the World,
Leaders of the Free World, yeah,
Leaders of the Free World, and definitely, I dig that album. So I might check that out on Spotify there, and maybe you can find a connection for it and give me an excuse.
Yeah. And so before the camera shuts down on us a second time, we may yet go to actual Philadelphia record stores tomorrow. We would certainly like to do that, and if we manage to get that done, I will throw in some B-roll over here and the different shops that we manage to visit. It feels like there's not, if not a super concentration necessarily, that they all seem to fall into South Philly, where they're walkable, maybe between each other with a little bit of fortitude. These are all down in South Philly. I've never been to any of them, so I would be interested to see if I fall in love with any of those stores, because I have the chance to revisit them. And I guess in the future, if I say, hey, I went to so-and-so record store, and then Eric will know what I'm talking about. Say, oh, yeah, that one was a cool one. So with that, I thank you for watching. Thank you for Eric being here.
Thanks for showing me around.
Yep. A little bit of history and a whole lot of records. And yeah, thanks for watching. Be back next week with a regular connection. What the hell is our show called?
Collection Connection.
That's the one. A collection connection. Next week here at the regular time. So thanks for watching again. Bye-bye.